are the students that I get to teach. It's a real honor to be able to teach these men and women, because we teach the pastors' wives as well. It's a real honor to be able to teach them and to be able to say that I had a part in helping them to follow God's call in their life. It's a real pleasure, and it's a real honor. And I hope you see that when we're talking about training pastors. It's really these guys who love Jesus like we do, who are going out to places where you and I could never go, and are sharing the gospel and doing a great job. I want to share one story about one of our students just recently. Mahinga is his name. And you can see a picture of him here. He doesn't look very happy. This picture I took at the end of his first year at the school. The school is 3 years, a 3-year school. And Mahinga felt called to become a pastor and felt like he needed to travel from his village, which is days and days away from us, by foot, because we have no roads. And so we have people who come by foot, or sometimes by bicycle if they can find a bicycle, or often by a dugout canoe. It's that far out in the middle of nowhere that people come to us to go to school. So Mahinga came with his wife, newly married. He was 24 years old. And he arrived at the school and was there for a few months. And his wife went into labor early. And she passed away during labor. It was really the first time that's ever happened at our school. It was really a big hit to us, a big strain on the school. And it was a terrible thing. They tried to do a cesarean, and she passed away, but the baby lived. And so it was really difficult for this man, 24 years old, who traveled days and days by foot to get to our school, believing that God called him to be a pastor. And not just himself, but his church as well. His church sent him and recommended him to come, believing that God called him to be a pastor. And so he came, and his wife passed away, and we didn't really have a plan for how to deal with this. Never happened before. And so the biggest problem initially was the baby. How do you feed a baby, a brand new newborn baby, that with no mother? In Congo, where we're at, there's no stores where you can go buy formula or anything like that. They nurse their children. The mothers nurse their children. And so one of the pastor's wives said, "Well, I just had a baby. I'm nursing my baby, and even though she was maybe a little malnourished herself, she said, I think I could probably nurse 2 babies at the same time. We'll try it. We'll see what happens until we can figure out a solution. At least we can keep the baby alive for a while." And so she took the baby into her own home and started nursing him. It was a little boy. And Mahinga started going through those stages that they talk about after the death of a loved one. First, he was in denial for a little while. He couldn't understand how this happened. If God called him to be a pastor, how would God let this happen? And he had what St. John of the Cross called a dark night of the soul. It was very dark inside. And he started getting angry. And that was the next stage, in anger. He would lash out at people and be angry, which is unusual for a Congolese person. They're really normally peaceful people. And the other students said, we can't just let him alone like this. We have to be with him all the time. And so they made a plan, all the other students. We're never going to let him be alone by himself. We're always going to have somebody with him. And so they started surrounding him. And it was really helpful, so he wasn't alone and didn't have to go through this by himself. And they would talk and share, and they would feed him as well. He as you can see, he doesn't look like he's eating very well. And he really struggled. And as one of the professors at the school, I personally thought he would go home. And in fact, I didn't know why he stayed. After his wife had died, I thought he would take his baby and go home. Go back to the village where his support was and all his family, but he didn't want to go home. He said, God called me to be a pastor, and I came here, so I'm going to stay. And so he actually stuck it out the first year, and he went home for at the school break at the summertime, and I thought, okay, this is the last I'm ever going to see him, because this is just too much. He was still struggling. He would come to class, sometimes not come to class, and We were giving him room because we didn't think he was really going to stick around, and he was just really struggling. And so he went home, and he left his baby with the other student's wife, and I thought, well, they'll raise the baby, and he'll go away, and we'll never see him again. Well, he went home, and he tried to explain to his family what happened to his wife, and they beat him up. They blamed him for his wife's death. How can you take her to a place like that and let her just die there? So they beat him up pretty badly. And in September, when classes started again, he showed up again to take classes. And I was really surprised after losing his wife and then being beat up by his family and having a baby that he can't take care of. I just felt like, this is too much to ask of anybody. He should just go home and be with his family. He stuck it out the second year, to my surprise. And we still had to give him room. He was still struggling. And not always stable. But we gave him space, and he came to class sometimes and grew. The third year, which is his last year, which was just this year that passed, the school year that passed, he was still in class. He came back. And in the first of the year, for the third year students, I have this third year students memorize the Apostles' Creed, which some of you might know, or it's in your hymnal, I'm sure. And we memorize it because it's a theology class, and it's an ancient document of the church, and we thought maybe it would help them to get a grasp of theology. And so they had to have an oral exam in class. And so the students came. It was the day for the oral exam. Some of them came very prepared. The bride ones came really prepared, and they sat at their desk, and I said, okay, who wants to go first? So the bride ones would raise their hand and say, okay, I want, and they would say the Apostles' Creed and get it over very quickly. Some of the other ones tried and struggled through it because they hadn't really done the work, or it was hard for them to memorize. And we got through it. We had 12 students. We got through the 11 of them. And Mahinga didn't do anything. And so, as usual, I was going to give him room and not embarrass him and ask me to do it because I didn't know if he did the homework. And we were getting ready to move on, and Mahinga said, wait, I want to say it. And it got really quiet in the room because no one knew what to expect. They didn't know if we were going to have to help him through and if he was going to get angry because we were helping him along. And then there was kind of these uncomfortable snickers, and some of the students were just really nervous, like, what's going to happen now? And Mahinga stood up, and all the other students sat at their desk and said it from their desk. He stood up and looked right at me. I'm at the front of the class. And he said, I believe in God the Father. And I believe in Jesus Christ, his Son. And he said it with so much conviction and so much feeling that you could tell he wasn't just doing his homework. It wasn't just something the teacher made him do, but it was something he went home and thought about. And it was something that, through all this dark night in his life, some light had shined in his heart. And something changed. I want to show you a picture that we took just last June. It's a little bit different. It's a picture of him as he's getting ready to leave with his son. You can't see it really well, but he looks a lot better, doesn't he? And God worked in his heart. And God honored his faith. And Mahinga is now a pastor somewhere. He left the school at the same time Jill and I left to come home. So I'm really anxious to go back and find out how he did. But I'm really excited because I know that this is someone who went through probably the darkest thing that any of us could ever go through and came out on the bright side. And he has light in his heart, and he can say to people in his village when he's there, when my wife died, all the people at the school gathered around me, and we prayed, and they took care of me, and they helped me, and we're going to do the same thing for your family. And we're going to help you. And when I was having a hard time, they prayed for me, and God helped me, and we're going to pray for you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this because he has been in a really dark place.